WFYI podcasts are made possible by Bloomington, Indiana, an American college town offering experiences like indulging in grub at Nick's English Hut, taking a stroll along Kirkwood Avenue, feeling the history and magic of Assembly Hall, and providing the chance to feel like a college kid again. Plan your trip at visitbloomington.com.
I'm Kyle Long, host of Cultural Manifesto, just one of the local music programs you can enjoy on WFYI. These programs would not be possible without your financial support. And to say thank you, we want to send you to see Lyle Lovett when he comes to Indianapolis on July 28th. Choose a concert ticket as your gift when you donate at WFYI.org/give. And thanks for supporting WFYI.
This is WFYI News Now. It's May 24th, and I'm Drew Dodlin. On today's show, Indianapolis offers to purchase the Riverfront site where the future stadium of Indy 11 was planned, a $100 million entrepreneurship fund for growing companies, and new waitlist slots will open for a Medicaid waiver this July, but lawmakers are concerned it won't be enough.
As state employees and as legislators, we are viewed by the public as we have the power to make changes, and the wait list is problematic. Even the term wait list for people who need services is problematic to communicate and explain to the public.
Those stories coming up, but first, the new installment of our regular segment called The Checkup from Side Effects Public Media, where the health reporting team explores a single question sparked by a recent news story or maybe by one of our listeners. This time, the team tries to find out why it's so hard to lower the cost of drugs.
The cost of drugs in the U.S. continues to skyrocket. The average drug price increase from 2022 to 2023 was 15%, according to the United States Department of Health and Human Services. Some federal organizations say Big Pharma plays a role in keeping drug prices high for Americans. So why is it so hard to lower drug costs? That's the Checkup's question for today. I'm Lizzie McGreevy, Community Engagement Specialist at Side Effects Public Media, and with me today is health reporter Elizabeth Gabriel.
Hey, Lizzie.
Hi, Elizabeth. So I've seen in the news just a few weeks ago that the Federal Trade Commission, or FTC, took a rare step. It sent warning letters to drug makers, saying that companies are abusing the system by filing what are called junk patents for their drugs. Can you help us understand what this means?
Yeah, so drug patents in the U.S. last for 20 years, and the Food and Drug Administration keeps track of those patents in something known as the Orange Book.
Orange Book? What's that?
So the Orange Book has a list of drugs and patents that the FDA deems safe and effective. As long as those patents are in place, pharma companies get to choose the price of the drug without competition. Drug makers say that's necessary because they pour millions and millions of dollars into cutting-edge research and drug development. After these patents expire, competitors like generic drug manufacturers can eventually join the market and typically offer the drug at a much lower price for consumers. But now, the FTC says drug makers are gaming the system by filing what is described as junk patents. Those are patents that don't really protect intellectual property or innovation in how a drug is made. The FTC says drug makers use them to extend their exclusive rights to the drug and prevent generic manufacturers from entering the market.
Elizabeth, this is truly blowing my mind. It's great to hear that the FTC has sent out these letters, but what about generic drug makers? Is there anything they can do? Can they sue the original pharma companies so they get on the market faster?
Yes, but that costs a ton of money and time. So they end up waiting out the patent, and that can take years.
Can you give us some examples of these junk patents?
Sure. So, for example, some drug makers would file patents for injection devices that are used to administer medications instead of the actual drug. Or when their initial patent is close to expiring, they make a very slight change to the dosage or the formulation of their drug. But the changes aren't innovative enough to warrant claims that their intellectual property is being stolen. So in case of an asthma drug, they would change the plastic or canister of the inhaler.
This is so wild. How has this even been happening? Aren't there any guardrails in the system to protect from something exactly like this?
Lizzie, that is such a good question. So there just isn't a strong federal accountability system filtering through patents. I spoke to Robin Feldman. She is a professor who studies healthcare law at the University of California, San Francisco. She says it's a regulatory problem in the sense that no one is minding the store.
The Patent and Trademark Office doesn't care whether something is useful or whether it's just being patented for an anti-competitive reason. They just look at whether something is different. The FDA does not consider itself a competition agency. The FDA says our job is just to decide whether it's safe and effective. Competition aid, that's not really our stuff. The Federal Trade Commission, for the first time, is stepping in and saying, okay, fine, we'll do some of this stuff, but they are overburdened and have bigger fish to fry. And they don't really have the inside view of what's happening at the FDA.
Okay, so how exactly have drug makers responded to this?
Some drug companies have actually removed their junk patents from the FDA's Orange Book, and that's led to improvements in terms of how much patients pay for asthma drugs, for example. But other companies argue that the FTC's accusation that their patents are junk isn't accurate.
So what's next in all of this?
If drug manufacturers don't remove their junk patent listings, they'll open themselves up to antitrust lawsuits, and those can be pretty expensive. But the FTC hasn't announced if and when this would happen.
Thank you for this wonderful information, Elizabeth. I always learn so much here during the checkup. And if you, our listeners, have questions about the healthcare system, about your health in general, or maybe some questions you're a little too shy to ask your doctor, let us know and we can try to get those answered for you on the checkup. Until next time, stay safe.
That was The Checkup, a segment from Side Effects Public Media. Side Effects is a regional health reporting collaboration of NPR member stations across the Midwest, based here at WFYI. And the City of Indianapolis has offered to purchase the Riverfront site where the future stadium of Indy 11 was planned. WFYI's Jill Sheridan has more.
The site where Indy 11 and Keystone Group owner Ursel Ozdemir plan to build 11 Park, a mixed-use development site with the new stadium as its anchor, is also where Indianapolis's first public cemetery was established. 11 Park broke ground last year before Indianapolis Mayor Joe Hogsett announced plans to seek a Major League Soccer team for Indianapolis, leaving the future of Indy 11 unknown. In an offer letter to Ozdemir, the city says research over the past year has brought to light how many bodies may still be on the site, saying up to 650 may have never been disinterred from 1 acre alone. It says, with this knowledge, any future development should include a, quote, painstaking and inclusive community conversation. The city offered Ozdemir market value for the property. I'm Jill Sheridan.
The state and venture capital firm Elevate Ventures announced Thursday the creation of a $100 million entrepreneurship fund. As Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith reports, Governor Eric Holcomb says the fund will fill a void for growing companies in Indiana.
Elevate Ventures CEO Christopher Day says his firm will use $25 million in its own investment returns and raise the other $75 million from the private sector. He says the fund will help companies that are beyond the initial startup stages.
So most of these investments would be in companies that are $7-8 million or more in revenue, and they would use it to scale product development, sales, and marketing.
Governor Holcomb says without this fund to help Indiana businesses, entrepreneurs here have had to look elsewhere to reach the next stage of growth.
And so for Indiana, this is, I almost see it as addressing that missing link.
Elevate Ventures aims to make the first funds available next year. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Brandon Smith at the State House.
And for our final story today, in response to the $1 billion Medicaid shortfall, the Family and Social Services Administration implemented a waitlist for a Medicaid waiver utilized by people with disabilities and those who want to age in place. As Indiana Public Broadcasting's Abigail Ruman reports, new slots will open in July, but lawmakers are concerned it won't be enough.
The state has about 50,000 slots for the aged and disabled waiver. In July, that number will increase to 55,000, split between the Pathways for Aging program and the Health and Wellness waiver. Senator Fatty Kadora says he's concerned that people who are deemed medically eligible for waiver services may be forced to wait just because of a budget limitation.
As state employees and as legislators, we are viewed by the public as we have the power to make changes, and the wait list is problematic. Even the term wait list for people who need services is problematic to communicate and explain to the public.
Lawmakers asked Medicaid officials how many people are on the wait list and if the slots opening in July will be enough. The director of Indiana Medicaid did not provide the total number of people, but says the agency will share more information in the future. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Abigail Ruman.
That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by the following people who live in your community: Aubriana Herron, Kendall Antron, who composed the music for this podcast, and me, Drew Dodlin. Our news director is Sarah Neal Estes. If you liked today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening, and have a good Memorial Day. We'll be back on Tuesday.
WFYI podcasts are made possible by Bloomington, Indiana, an American college town offering experiences like indulging in grub at Nick's English Hut, taking a stroll along Kirkwood Avenue, feeling the history and magic of Assembly Hall, and providing the chance to feel like a college kid again. Plan your trip at visitbloomington.com.